Today we're diving into a really fascinating and for some pretty controversial interpretation of history, one that sees our entire existence as one single epic spiritual drama. So let's just start with this huge question. What if all of history, everything you've ever learned, all the wars, the empires, the headlines you see today, what if it isn't just a random string of accidents? What if it's all one single connected story? Okay, so let's get right into this framework. The idea here is that history isn't just one chaotic thing after another. Instead, it's a spiritual war. A war with a very clear beginning, a really complicated middle that we're living in, and, well, a prophesied end. Alright, so to really get a grip on this, we have to start with the absolute foundation of this whole idea. It's a concept called the biblical meta-narrative. You can think of it as the special lens that makes sense of everything else. So what is that? Well, in short, it's the idea that all of human history fits into one grand story. It's about a kingdom that was created perfectly. Then it was lost through a rebellion. And now we're living through the long process of it being restored. Now this quote here is absolutely key. It's the anchor for this entire viewpoint. Because in this way of seeing things, Christ isn't just a historical figure who shows up halfway through the story. No. He's presented as the central point, the very reason for creation itself, the axis that all of history spins around. Okay, so if it's a war, where did the first shot get fired? Well, according to this framework, you have to go all the way back. All the way back to the Garden of Eden. This is where it all kicks off. A moment of temptation that leads to humanity's fall. But what's so crucial here right from the get-go is that a promise is made. A prophecy that a future hero called the Seed would one day come and win the war for good. So the ending, in a way, is hinted at from the very beginning. But, after that first move, the conflict didn't stay subtle for long. It escalated, and I mean dramatically, into a full-on physical attack against the human race itself, trying to corrupt it at its very source. And this is where the story gets really wild. This reading of Genesis 6 describes this insane sequence of events. You have fallen angels, these watchers who come down, they have children with human women, and they create a hybrid race, the Nephilim. The source says this corruption got so bad, so out of control, that a global flood was needed just to hit the reset button on the whole planet. So after the flood basically wiped the board clean of that whole hybrid problem, the enemy's strategy had to change. That old plan was off the table. But that doesn't mean the war was over. Oh no. It just meant the tactics had to get a little more subtle. And what we see here is like a cosmic chess match playing out over centuries. On one side, you've got the enemy's new moves, demonic influence, pushing idolatry, big rebellions like the Tower of Babel. And on the other side, you have God's counter strategy unfolding step by step through a man, then a nation, and then, finally, the Messiah. And this is the D-Day of the entire spiritual war. In this framework, the crucifixion and resurrection aren't just about personal salvation, though it's that too. It's the decisive war-winning victory. It's the moment the enemy's power was fundamentally broken. Okay, so with that major victory on the board, the adversary has to change tactics again. Direct assault failed, the cross was a total defeat. So what's left? Plan C, subversion, deception from the inside out, playing the long game. And you can kind of see this new strategy play out over centuries. First, the source claims the church itself gets co-opted. Then, during the Renaissance, these occult ideas start creeping into intellectual circles. And then there's a huge moment, the rise of modern science, which helps create a worldview where God is just more distant. It's all setting the stage for the final act. And this is where it gets really clever, according to the source. The whole point of this long-term intellectual project was to build a new picture of the universe. One that's super old, super big, and probably full of other intelligent life. Why? Because it creates the perfect cover story for these ancient spiritual beings to reintroduce themselves. Not as gods or demons, but as extraterrestrials. And that, of course, brings us right up to today. This whole framework, this ancient spiritual lens, is now being used to make sense of the strange things happening in our own time, connecting it all back to that original conflict. So you see the headlines, right? Governments all over the world are openly talking about UAPs. That's a verifiable fact. But in this view, that's not some random new development. It's the endgame. It's the logical conclusion of that centuries-long strategy we just walked through. So that's the big question on the table, isn't it? How on earth do you connect a spiritual conflict in the Garden of Eden with a UAP sighting today? I mean, it seems like a massive leap, right? How could one possibly lead to the other? Well, the way this framework ties it all together is by pointing to a specific biblical prophecy that the final act of this whole spiritual war would involve a massive global deception, one defined by great signs and wonders. So it leaves us with this one final and pretty unsettling question. Could the modern extraterrestrial narrative be the ultimate Trojan horse, the final act in this ancient war for planet Earth?